Hey, uh, say hi.
Say hi, it's live.
Say hi to our viewers.
Now she's getting quiet.
A little
Yeah,
bit.
you can hear you.
Okay, camera shy. No worries. I understand. Welcome to another episode of 430 CTZ. We've got myself, Duncan, and my co-host Peter, and we have some more super interesting topics that we'd like to bring to your attention.
Interesting.
That's right. Not just mildly interesting, but actually worthy of your time and attention.
I think what the one that I have is going to be super awesome. I found a super awesome one today. Yeah, but I'll save that for later.
Great. Okay. say.
That's
go out with a bang here.
Yeah.
I saw an interesting short news bit here. Apparently, so I own a website domain, and it's just kind of on a whim. I decided I was going to make this website and explore that. And so one thing I was wondering is, I have to pay a monthly fee to my web service provider. Why can't I just buy the domain name forever and it just be mine?
Right.
And so I was looking into that, and it turns out that nobody can buy the domain names. It all goes through this. I think it's called ICANN. It's like a central registry.
Right.
And so you can buy, 10 years ahead of time, but you can't buy it indefinitely.
Okay.
So, so something interesting happened. An ex-Google employee was he was watching the feed of the domain names that come up for sale, and he was specifically looking at Google, and he actually saw the Google domain name google.com pop up on the screen, and it came up for sale, and he bought the Google domain google.com.
What?
And pretty crazy. And so he ended up, this is really recent. This was like the 12th. So I guess this was, today or yesterday.
Wait, he was a Google employee at the time too?
Yes, he purchased. No, well, he was an ex-Google employee.
Ex-Google, okay.
But he was watching to see if, domain names were related to Google. That like Google might want to buy in the future. And so, but he saw Google.com, and so he bought Google.com for $12 due to a flaw in their system.
Wow.
And so when he purchased the site, he immediately began receiving emails from like the webmasters and like the tools for the domain names and like private information about Google.com. And so his access was revoked within a minute when they realized, what had happened.
Wow.
And they gave him some money to just like as a hey, thanks for
finding this,
for finding the security flaw.
Yeah.
And then he decided to donate the money to charity. So they're like trying to outdo each other, I guess, of like who's the good guy in the story. So, anyways, thought that was kind of interesting.
That is, wow. Yeah, it is crazy. It's funny. I kind of had I had a similar thing with my own website, or like I had experienced like a great tragedy because I had this this website which I was like, oh man, I know this is kind of one of those names that like would go pretty quickly, and like I had signed up under a different email, the one that I didn't use, and so GoDaddy had been sending me like all these notifications and that like it's about to expire, but I wasn't getting those, and so like literally like I want to say like a month after it actually expired, like I went and checked this email, and I'm looking at these emails, looking at this list, and I see that it had expired, and I'm just like immediately like my heart dropped, and I was just like no, it's just and then like a year later, I was like, man, I was like still like reminiscing on like that painful memory, and I was like, I'm just gonna go to GoDaddy and just see what happens, I was actually typing in other names that were like kind of similar to it.
What was the name?
It was nextlife.tv.
Okay.
And so I was like, let's just try different names, whatever. And And I was like, I'll just try this name, that name again, just in case, And I typed it in, and it popped up immediately. And I was like, oh my god, and I missed the part where I said when I lost it, I went back to see if I could get it. It wasn't there at all. Like someone had taken it up immediately. And I checked a couple days later, it was like gone. But then it came back a year later. So I guess never give up. That's the story.
Well, cool. You got your domain.
Yeah, no, it was a win.
I mean, if like for those people that were like, had enough foresight to realize that the internet was like gonna be a big deal, and they like
Seriously
bought those domain names early on, like, man, that's like millions of dollars, like easy.
Oh yeah, I actually just recently saw this really cool company that basically what they do is they buy out all these different domain names, and then they create logos for each of these domain names. So basically you can go onto their library and like search for like cool names or names that would be like related to what you're doing. So it's like if you're a courier service, like you could look up like speedydelivery.com or like, just things that would like Rapido or something like that. And they already have like a logo, you get your logo and then the domain name that comes with it. And that's always, I've worked with a couple startups, and like that's always like, it's always a bitch when you're like, you're looking for the name, you're like, oh yeah, that's it, and then you're like, oh no, it's like $40,000. Like,
all right, and you want the nice domain names like .com or .whatever,
right,
instead of some like .Australia or something that nobody's.
They got so many dots. Yeah, there's so many like. It's like crazy. Yeah, it's crazy how many dots they have these days. But yeah, I always wonder if that will change. If like.
Oh, it's definitely. I definitely think it'll change.
Right. Into some, it's like what if like the way, like what I wonder if there will be a day. I'm sure there will. Where there is no www, and there's a whole completely different way that we find things. I'm sure that will be it, but.
Well, I mean, it works off of the IP number system. So to get to a website, what you really need is the IP address. And then the names associated with it are just a shortcut to the numbers. Obviously, you don't want people to have to type in a long string of numbers. But, it's all regulated, like I was saying, by the ICANN. And, I mean, this is kind of a news thing a while back, was they opened up like a .xxx was like a new domain. So like when they start running out of space, they change the last .com or .net, and they add more stuff to that. So
they essentially just made space for like all the porn sites.
Exactly.
Yeah, let's just start with those. It's taking up a significant portion of the internet.
Because I mean, it is a big part of the internet. I mean, I would imagine Netflix and porn is at least like half the internet easily.
It have to be,
if not more.
Right. Exactly. Oh, that's really funny. Yeah, that's crazy. Who was I? I almost wanted to share the stat. Someone like released a stat on like Pornhub.com of like who like watches what videos, kind of a thing. I think like I recently heard this just randomly, and I guess like it's like 50% of women watch like lesbian videos. Like that was like the weird stat. Like, oh, that's interesting. That like half of women like enjoy watching like that type of content, but that just came to mind when you brought that up. But I'll have to look up that like actual study, because like it was like released like as like a research study.
I mean, like what level of detail did they have on their demographics to like?
I feel like it.
Find out what kind of porn your boss watches.
Yeah, right. Probably, right. When they watch it, where they. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know if I saw that actual article directly, because or if I heard it from another source. But I'll have to look that up. But randomness. But speaking of, since we're in the realms of technology, I gotta share this one, because it's like really awesome. You might have even heard of it. I don't know, but I haven't heard of it. So it's called. So there's this place in Utah. It's very new. It hasn't even opened up yet, but it's called The Void. And what it is the first virtual reality theme park. And so basically what it is, it's just like a laser tag game. Like it's just like, it looks just like that. One of those like, you know, like just like this space set up where you have like all these structures and like obstacles to like run around in, except you have a headset on with virtual reality gear on. And so basically you have this form, which is like the physical reality, which is like the form, and then painted over the form is all of the video game, which is painted over the form. So as you're literally going through like these caves or whatever the setting is, you can feel everything that you see in the virtual reality you feel in real life. And what's really cool is like they try to be as specific as possible to kind of trick your brain into thinking that it's real. So like if like there's like fire burning and you'll feel like the heat, or if like there's you know, if it's like a stone wall, you'll feel like that sort of you'll feel the stony nature on your, what's the word I'm looking for? You'll feel it. You'll feel it with your hands. But they have all these different things that like kind of trick your mind into thinking that you're actually there. But it's really interesting, and they talk about too how it's going to be like a movie theater. They're going to kind of have it in a similar way where like every week there's like a new game or a new kind of sometimes it's more of just for exploring. It's like more of an exploratory type game, and sometimes it's more of like an action based like shoot 'em up type of game, or you can like be like versing in other players. But yeah, so that's like that's this new world we're walking into. It's like a virtual reality in the real world.
Wow.
So yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Did you so you know about like the Oculus Rift and like the different headsets that are coming out?
Right, yeah. I've looked at my Oculus Rift
release.
Right.
So one thing I saw on Kickstarter was it's kind of like a treadmill, but it's a 360-degree treadmill, and there's like grooves and you put these like shoes on that have like a little ball that fits into the groove, and so you basically you're walking on this 360-degree treadmill, and you can, you know, of course, rotate to any direction, and then you get your Oculus Rift headset on, and so it's like you're actually walking in a virtual environment. And you know, so like, you know, if you get tired of walking around the block in the morning, you know, just go walk around Skyrim or something like that. I mean, like we've got these massive virtual worlds that you know are there. So
right,
interesting.
Yeah, no, that's crazy. You know, it's interesting too, because I kind of want to discuss this later on. But I've been doing a lot of research in non-duality, like the spiritual approach, or the I guess you could say the philosophy of non-duality, and that is all. The whole premise of that is that like nothing is real. Everything that the body and the mind conceives is not real. That it's like it's imaginary.
Well, I mean, I'm really glad that you brought this up. I think this could definitely be a fruitful topic, but
For sure.
you know, I don't want to interrupt you what you were going to say, but
right. Go ahead.
I wouldn't say that. I don't think non-duality is saying that nothing is real. I think it's saying that the sense of separation that we experience is an illusion. So,
okay, I get what you're saying. So, okay. So reality is, I guess like, so non-duality says that reality is not the body and body-mind experience. That is not reality.
No, I think that is what non-duality says. I think what non-duality says is that so science is like the dominant paradigm of our thinking.
Right.
And so, and it's like, you know, this is the way that our culture looks at the world, but it's not the way that all cultures at all times in places have looked at the world. So to to break it down, non-duality means, so duality means that there's two things,
Right.
and those two things are the subject and the object. So if
Okay.
you think about all your experiences, you have the experience of there's me, the subject, and then there's a world out there that I'm experiencing.
Right.
And so, like, you know, as that's like the problem of consciousness is like, how could we ever explain how there is a subjective experience? Like, how could matter, something that's like, you know, lifeless, and you know, we couldn't really understand how that has a subjective experience, but how could that give rise to consciousness? So I think but like Buddhism, for example, is a non-dual philosophy
Right.
slash, you know, religion in some ways.
Right.
And, you know, their whole message is that the ego is, it's an illusion, and we're trapped in that. And that is, so
Because
that,
the
so they do preach non-duality.
right, because the ego is the identification with the mind and the body. That's what the ego is.
Yes.
It's so yeah. So essentially, yeah. So those are illusory states essentially, and
Well, the ego,
they would be defined as what's
the
that?
ego is an illusory state,
Right.
but it's real. I mean, like, the world is real.
The world is well. That's not what a non-dualistic perspective would say. That the world is not real, and that it's just as, I guess I would say, well, I think that's the practice. That's the practice, is to see beyond what you would call the world and what is real, because it's very easy to be look around and be like, oh yeah, this is the world. This is the world, but from what I'm reading, what I'm saying, from what I've been practicing, is that there is like a way to go beyond that, and that requires meditation. That requires a different. It's really just a different focus. It's not just meditation. It's like, well, I mean, meditation is connecting to that void space, which is what they say they have. So this is kind of what I've understood as I'm going through it. They say you have your body, right? You have your mind, but then when you close your eyes, like, you're still seeing, you're aware. You have this. There's this presence that's there. That is not necessarily of the body or the mind. It's just there. It's there, like, since birth, and it goes away at death. And behind that presence is this void, which everything comes from, which is the oneness state. That's like that's like infinity. That's like the 0 point. That's like nothingness. That is like where everything kind of comes from, and that's like the oneness state. That's like where that's like the non-dual state. At least that's what they talk about. So they say that is reality. That is what it is.
Who is they in this?
They, I mean, any non-dualistic teachers, specifically the one I've been looking at recently. His name is Nisargadatta. His last name is Maharaj. So Maharaj, that's easier. He actually wrote this book called I'm That, which is actually, apparently, according to the Austin half-price bookstore, is an extremely popular book. Like, it's like always off the shelves, apparently, which is, I would have never expected. But
well, so I mean, I think
you're here first, folks.
So I think that there's a couple of ways that we can start to break this down.
Yeah.
And so there's a concept in philosophy that's called naive realism.
Okay.
And that refers to the idea that what we experience with our senses is actually the way reality is. And so that can be contrasted with a more... So I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
So if I'm on a hill and I'm looking at a tree and I see an apple on the tree and it's noon at 12 o'clock and the sun's overhead, and I perceive that apple as red. Okay. But when it's evening, the sun is setting and the apple will not be red anymore. It'll be red, and it'll be more gray, more gray, more gray until it's completely black, and you can't see it anymore.
Right.
So if I was a naive realist, I would think that something about the apple changed. But, clearly the apple stayed the same, but my perception of the apple changed.
Okay.
So an informed view of realism would say that, okay, so, I mean, I get that the world is as much formed by our perceptions of it as it is what the real stuff out there. And so, then you start to get into stuff like Descartes' demon, which is kind of what started the modern philosophy of science. So this is the thought experiment that, his famous statement, "I think, therefore I am." So there's so the thought experiment says, if I am being deceived by an evil genie, then what can I doubt about my experience? And his answer is, well, you can doubt anything that's an object in your experience. So, for example, if there's an evil genie, an omnipotent evil genie deceiving me, I'm not really sitting in this chair right now, but I'm locked up in a warehouse, on anesthetics, and I'm just hallucinating that
you're in a virtual reality game.
That's right. But kind of the core that he boiled it down to was that I couldn't be deceived that there is a me here that's experiencing that. I can't say exactly what I am, but like you were saying, there's that ground there that I can't be deceived about. So I know that there's a me. I don't know what I am. I don't know what the world is, but there has to be a subject, like an I.
Mm.
And so, as far as different, people that try and teach this practice, the one name that I've heard before is Maharishi, and I don't know if it's the same guy that you're talking about.
That might be it.
But,
yeah, because it looks like the same. I think I'm just pronouncing it.
Is it Ramana Maharshi?
No. I think it's a different guy. It must be a different guy.
Well, but the essence of what he taught, that it was supposed to be the fastest way to get to enlightenment, was that, you're meditating, and then you have a thought arises, and then you say, well, who is it that's having this thought?
Right. Who am I?
And so you're constantly looking deeper into the I, and you're like, who is it that's having this thought? And you just keep pushing in that direction, and then you eventually realize, okay, I can't really solve. It can't really be solved. I'm just like you're saying, you're kind of this blank canvas that is the space in which all experiences is arising.
Right.
And I think a story that really illustrates that was, have you heard of Ram Dass?
Yeah.
The spiritual teacher?
For sure.
So
Be Here Now.
Be Here Now. So Richard Alpert, so him and Timothy Leary were psychologists at Harvard. And Tim Leary went to Mexico and got these Mexican magic mushrooms. And this was before, really anybody in the United States knew much about this. And so he had this experience, and then he wanted to share it to people, as being a psychology professor at Harvard, it was very enlightening to him.
Right.
So and at the time, this was being investigated by like Sandoz, which is a chemical manufacturer in Germany. And so they started this group at Harvard of psychologists that were using these medicines to investigate what could be done for personal exploration, but also for therapy. And so they got several large bottles of pure psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in the mushrooms. And so
Wow.
their group started to go on these, wacky adventures, of course. And but specifically what Richard Alpert talks about is like the experience when he like really got it was, so he was he was on this chemical, this entheogen, and he was thinking to himself, and he saw, he had his eyes closed, and he's like, this is Richard Alpert, the airline pilot, because he got his pilot's license and he could fly. And this is Richard Alpert, the husband. This is Richard Alpert, the professor.
Right.
And so he saw all of these as like facets of his identity. But then he started to realize that they weren't really who he was at the core. It was more just like roles that he played.
Right.
And so then he started to think, well, what about my foot? Like, could I still be Richard Alpert without my foot? And he's like, yeah, well, I guess I could still be me without my foot. And he's like, what about, my body? Could I still be me without my body? He's like, yeah. And so then it like kind of clicked for him, and he just got it. And he was like, I'm this,
awareness,
I'm just
presence,
awareness.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's what brought that up for me, what you're saying.
That's really cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. I had not heard that story. Yeah, I find it very fascinating. This non-dualistic perspective. I think I find it fascinating because I've been really kind of applying some of the methods that Maharaj, such a similar name, has suggested in what he writes. And what he says is that basically what you really need to do is essentially reject all desire and fear in your reality. So reject it all. So whenever a desire or fear comes up for you, you just like ignore it. You don't put your focus on it at all. And when I think of desire, I think like I kind of wanted to clarify it, because sometimes when I think of like rejecting the desire, I immediately go to like the kind of like a very strict Christian type of perspective where you have to like deny yourself of all like sex and all, like not that this is wrong or anything, but like I immediately go there, but it's not necessarily that type of desire, even though like I think for me in the beginning it's been like this desire to like this desire that exists either in the future or in the past, the desire to like be someone or do something that's like that just constantly comes up for me, or like desires in the past. Memories are a big thing too, which bring you out of the present moment. So you have this aspect, and of course you have fears, and those fears are just like, they're pretty constant, like whether you want to admit it or not, like you have tons of fears. So it's been interesting because ever since last Thursday, I've really just kind of been tracking my consciousness, I guess I would say. So every time I catch myself in either a desire that is in the future or the past, or I catch myself starting to think about a fear, I immediately just stop. I just like, oh no. I'll be like, that's a desire, stop, or that's a fear, stop, and then I'll move my mind somewhere else, or move to somewhere, or actually I'll get more engaged within the present moment. And it's actually, it's been very interesting, because I've realized that I'm no longer, I no longer have these like emotional swings. Like I'm very like neutral. Like I mean I can be I have a lot more control over my emotions, like a lot more. It's been very interesting, and I felt like so much more clear, like a lot more clear. And I actually I've noticed this too, is that when I smoke marijuana, I also feel very, very clear. I think that because you kind of enhances your sensitivities, it kind of enhances different aspects of yourself that you aren't usually, maybe not you're more aware of parts of yourself, I guess I would say. And so I've noticed that you kind of have this feel. And what it's felt like, in the most thing I can compare it to the most, is like a juice cleanse. It feels like that, because it's like a juice cleanse, or like a fast for your mind, which is, and I found that very intriguing, very helpful. So, but I just wanted to share that, because I was like kind of blown away by how effective it has been thus far. So,
well, I mean, that is an interesting way to look at it. And I feel like, well, I feel like it may not be that easy to sort of let go of our fears and desires.
dude, it's not. It's not. I think it's a process. It's more of like something that you have to work on. So I think it's a muscle that you have to build up, in a sense.
Well, that's good. Well, I mean, I guess the way that I think about it is like, I don't think the ego's necessarily a bad thing, but I think if left unchecked, it kind of becomes this cancerous thing. And so if you think back to when you were a baby, you didn't have really, you didn't have the ability to influence your environment. And so that is a very scary kind of place to be. And so imagine you're a baby lying in your crib. At first your brain is, just fresh and open, and there's not these connections. And so the baby doesn't know where its arm starts and where the bed begins. And so it's just kind of having this amorphous sensory experience, just taking in everything, all the sensory information. And then only as it develops does it realize, okay, if I do this, it moves my arm. If I do this, it causes pain. So we're born into, or at least I think we are, born into this ocean of non-duality. And then our ego forms and crystallizes out of that. And so the ego is a protection mechanism that exists to move us to desirable states and keep us away from pain. And so for that, it's good, but it can also be limiting if that's your only perspective that you can take.
Right.
If you're only thinking about me and mine, that's the limited perspective. Eventually, the idea is you want to be able to enlarge that perspective to, your family and your friends, and then eventually the whole world. Would be an ideal. Would be an ideal way to think about an idealized type of ego.
Right.
So I don't think it's bad, but
it's not bad. But I guess from my perspective, in my life, and what I've learned, and what I've perceived, is that it's like the ego does inevitably lead to suffering. Like it just does, because when I guess like when you put your identity within your body and within your mind, I guess like I wish I could explain this better, but like it's like there's this tendency to suffer, like because and I think what it is because you feel like unfulfilled in a lot of different ways, like the body and the mind kind of like, or at least I know the mind, like there's this constant kind of like need, like it needs something, and it's amplified by our culture, where it's like, oh, you got to need shit. Yeah, you do got to need. You need more of this. You need more of that. And so culture doesn't help, but I think the mind just is naturally like that. And like you're saying, when you're like a child and you're not even like, you haven't even formed that basis of, you haven't conceptualized what a body is, that you're in a body and you have this mind, and you're not judging things. You're like completely present, and you're just observing. You're not judging things at all. Like there's these experiences that you may have, like painful experiences, but they're just experiences. You're not, I guess it's interesting, because you're still like detached from that body mind perspective. You're still kind of out here, and obviously you learn to kind of you learn to like merge with that, and like really embody that. But it's definitely an interesting aspect of things.
I mean, if you study Buddhism or if you study the non-dual philosophies, the first thing that definitely does come out is that yes, attachment leads to suffering. So
Right.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm trying to remember how I phrased it, but it's like the only problem that ever happens is when like you're denying the way reality is. So if you're completely aligned with what is, then you won't be experiencing any resistance to what
Right.
is.
Yes, that's a perfect way of saving it.
Which is a hell of a lot easier said than done. So
Exactly.
like, and the way that you can kind of think of this a little more practically is like, so the Tao Te Ching, Taoism, it says, don't be attached to the outcome. The master is not attached to the outcome. So to me, what that means, it's like, I'm living my life, and like life is a process. And so as long as I'm doing the process and I'm not attached to the outcome, then it's like it's kind of a win-win. Because if I'm like, if want something to happen and I don't get it, then I'm going to be pissed off. But if I realize that no, this is just a process of me, it's like school in a way. It's a process of me being more and more in alignment with myself in the universe, then it's just enough to know that the process is continuing, and then whatever you know that good things will come in the future from what you've done, the fruits of your action.
Right. Yeah, it's it's like one of those things that can be incredibly difficult, yet it's incredibly simple. It's incredibly simple to just be who you are and accept where you're at and what is now, and just like take it moment to moment and realize that each, like our life is really like this combination of moments. And so if we just break it down moment to moment, we'll like actually enjoy it and we'll actually like experience it.
Like at the same time, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to like live the best life that you can.
Right.
Because I think when you say don't have any desires, then you're like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like,
no, exactly. I think that's something that I've been really like fighting with for a long time now, or like kind of like debating with my mind, because I'm like I'm a driven person, but I guess like from what I've learned and just like people I've talked to, and I'm just like, oh, I can't be driven. But there's a different sense here. Like
you can experience. It's good to experience your drive, but experience it without the attachment of this has to be this way.
Right, exactly.
Like, no, like this drive is a part of who I am, and I'm experiencing that, and that's okay. But I don't get bent out of shape if I don't always get my way.
There's definitely intention. It's like it's intention versus expectation. You can easily get lost in expectation. That like, and expectation. I think there's a lot, like there's like this desire for fame, this desire for like power, this desire to like be someone, and this desire to be understood, this desire to be respected. I think actually for like males in our society, we have this like the most, because it's just like it's kind of just like ingrained within us that there is that like need to like prove ourselves in ways, and I think that's always been the most difficult thing to like deal with. But yeah, I think that when you're like totally aligned with who you are in this present moment, and then you're like, and in that present moment, feeling good about what you're doing and just doing that, I think that's where there's this natural drive. There's this natural like beautiful things can be created, like you can be successful in that nature, but you're literally just drawing. I think you're just in this process of like, I'm painting a painting. I'm not like trying to analyze how to get the best brush stroke and how many follows I get if I go like that, or like how famous I'll be if I go like that, But so, yeah, there's definitely a difference.
So I think like and I'm just gonna say what I think.
Just say anything.
Okay, so if you imagine that that at or we're like to go back to non-duality, we're experiencing this separation, and we know intellectually the separation is an illusion, and sometimes more than others we have more clarity about seeing through the illusion. But on the other side of the illusion is non-duality and not separateness. So there's not a me in a world. There's just me and the world, and they're the same thing. And so everything that we do is trying to fill that gap or that void that exists, that's like just being this tiny person when the entire universe is out there. And so like trying to find the perfect romantic partner, sex, food, drugs, all these things that people do to distract themselves are ways of trying to re-experience that state of not being separate.
Right.
So so I think it's like and if you live that way, it's a constant struggle. But there's a way that you can practice through meditation and these different other practices that it's kind of like letting down your guard for a minute and saying, okay, I'm going to stop trying so damn hard to be this person. I'm just going to be here with this experience and not feel the need to like add something to it.
Yes.
Not try and make it more than it is, because whatever I have is enough.
Right.
And so I guess there's a lot of ways to look at it, but that's how I look at it.
My the best spiritual advice that I ever received in my life, like best ever, was 2 words, and those words were "fuck it." And it's so true. It's so true. Like when you really can just say "fuck it" to like everything that you've ever believed, everything that you thought you were, everything you think you are, who you're going to be. It's actually very healing. It's a very it immediately kind of puts you in the state of like. It means puts you in the state of effortlessness. Like it just is, and it's all good, and you don't have to like think too hard about it because it's just there. There's actually a book. There's even a book written. It's called "Fuck It: The Ultimate Spiritual Truth." I actually didn't get that from that, but I actually have that book as well because I saw it later on. I was like, oh my god, someone wrote a book about it. I'm glad because those are good words. But
I remember, I think on a different podcast, you kind of brought up the topic of like how your path is kind of asking like what do I need, or like you might have put it a different way, but you were starting to tell me a little bit about your journey of just like thinking like, okay, say I have expectations I need to go to school and go down this certain career path, and then at a certain point you start to wonder, well, is this career that I'm thinking of really going to be fulfilling to me, or just like what, how does that tie in with kind of what you were saying? Does that ring a bell?
I'm trying to think. So how does it tie into non-duality, or is that what you're saying, or?
I just remember you were saying, you were going down this career path, and then you thought, you know what, maybe I need to take a chance and like move to Austin, like do something different.
Right.
So it's like, what was going on at that moment where you were like in tune with yourself enough to realize that like you're taking a chance, but it could be worth it in the long term?
That was so just to give you a brief summary, like I went to chiropractic school for for most of the time, like 3.5 years, and I dropped out within the last 6 months of receiving my doctorate. And before that happened, I went through I guess I would say like an identity crisis, and like all these things started collapsing in my life to the point where I didn't even know what I was or who I was anymore. And so I guess that there was like kind of this, I had these interesting spiritual experiences where like I could not identify like who I was. And that's like a very scary point, because like you realize that how important like an identity is, especially in like living in this, we could call it the real world or whatever it is, this world. It's like extremely important, but like you also realize when you lose that, you realize, oh my gosh, like, that's odd. Like, how do I talk to people? You know, because you reference your identity with everything, you know, every experience you have, you're all constantly referencing your identity. And when you have no reference point, it's very difficult. But anyways, I guess I would say that, trying to relate here, cause I could probably write a book on it just to shorten it up, is that I guess like, I realize that like a lot of in our culture, we're kind of like, it gets more and more serious as you go on, and the stakes kind of like get higher and higher, but really there aren't any stakes, but they're kind of like these illusory stakes. And so you start building up on these like needs and like who you need to be, who you need to become, what you need to uphold. And that all of that builds up on this incredible amount of fear that is there, to the point where, and the experience is different from everyone, but I think that it becomes incredibly difficult to go a different path or to let go of who you are, what you've built, because it's scary. You don't know what's going to happen. Like a lot of times it requires you to commit social suicide. Like literally you have to like, I mean, for me, it was like I had to just like cut away everything. And that's extremely scary. You don't know. So, and I guess that whole process has been like a process of, you know, like following what I truly feel is what is truly in alignment with me. And the reason why I could do that is because I was in so much pain. I was suffering so hardcore I was suffering so much that like I could not take another step in a direction that I knew was not me, was not in alignment with who I was. And that right there, I think that is the reason why I think a lot of people experience, and this is just like my subjective observation, but I think this is why a lot of people have major things happen, like major car crash or cancer, or like something life-changing happens. It forces them to suffer so much that they have to change direction, and that new direction is usually who they truly are. And sometimes it requires that like major like kind of like turning point. But so yeah, I guess I would say that like it's so much for me. It was so much like following. I didn't feel like I had an option because it was too painful to keep going the way I was going. So I don't know if that answered it.
I mean, no, that's a great explanation. It almost sounds like kind of like a dark night of the soul type of a thing.
Yeah,
like
I think that would be a good way.
So bad, the suffering is so extreme that you just can't take it anymore, and it's almost like it's like your old personality. It's like a broken bone. Like your bone gets broken, and then that's your old personality. It's broken, and then it sets, and when it heals, it's going to be stronger and more resilient. So like your whole paradigm of looking at the world, broke down, and just like it's anyone who's ever been close to a nervous breakdown knows it's not fun, but
yes,
it's like, I don't know, the crumbling of the old to make way for the new. So,
and I think it's a very good thing to taste the dirt, because when you taste the dirt and you've gone the lowest that you could have possibly ever imagined you could go, you realize that no matter what, you're actually very supported. It's been like interesting because I've been at the low of lows, like, And I guess like to some people might even still describe me as at the low of low, but like I've been completely supported. I guess like there's been so many times where I don't know how to do any, like I don't know how to like move forward. I don't know what's gonna come next. I don't know, I have nothing. How am I gonna have anything? But it's been really interesting to see how like by letting go, like everything is kind of like doors have opened, and I've always been supported. Like I'm not living on the street. I'm, like I'm not like dead. I'm here. I'm living abundantly. I have friends. Like I live in a new city. It's just interesting to see how letting go of that fear has really, it's allowed a lot of abundance in, which is, it kind of like, it always blows my mind. Like that is possible. That can happen, so
kind of like trust, trusting that the universe isn't going to let you fall too far.
Trust, and it goes back to the non-duality state. It's like the non-dual state. The reason why like it's important to like get connected to that is because that's an extremely abundant state. Like there is no lack there. There is no like this void, this non-dual void is not like it doesn't have to pay for its energy bill or like its wireless internet bill. It doesn't have like any of these expenses. It's like completely, it is, so when you're connecting to that like perfect thing, that like that power, I think that's what kind of like brings a lot of that back into your life. You're like, oh shit, like I don't need anything actually. Like I can just kind of live and be and like allow things to come in.
I mean, I really like that. I like that way of thinking. And the only reason that I can't, what I still struggle with today is like the problem of like evil or just like immense suffering. There's kids that are born in Africa and live for like 2 minutes and then they die. And there's like, the Holocaust happened and like all this horrible stuff happened.
Right.
Like how can we like see that and at the same time be like, just, throw ourselves out there and like trust that something is going to catch us.
Yeah.
Like,
no,
that's what I'm still struggling with because I want to, but I was like, this terrible shit happens.
Right. And it's crazy too, because like, again, like the darkness teaches just as much as the light does, I would say. Like, I think that like, I know I've like heard a lot about different like Holocaust survivors that like are like, I guess you could label them as like being enlightened because they having this extreme experience, this extremely dark experience kind of has allowed them to see like a lot of the light of their world, seeing in a very different way. So, I mean, from an outsider perspective, seeing the Holocaust or seeing like a baby die, like that's like it's a disheartening experience, just because you're looking at it from that perspective. But I think that, I don't know, like just from my own subjective experiences going through very difficult, hard times, I've realized how necessary they were. And I would go through it again if it meant like breaking out of like this kind of perceptual trap that I was in, I guess I would say. That would be the best way. So, I mean, I don't know. I think.
I mean, I'm not saying anybody has the answer to the problem.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. You have a valid point there, absolutely. I mean, but like I think
you're right. It does, like it does, sort of, heaven, heaven wouldn't mean anything if you didn't have hell to contrast it with.
Right.
I mean, that's the nature of being in this incarnation, duality. In this universe, in duality. So.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it is a phenomenal thing. It's an interesting thing. Hey, speaking of the universe and all that, I just want to share this real quick. Is that first of all, just super quick, is that today is a new moon. so it's a lot of like new beginning, like new moons represent new beginnings. So like it's like a blank space. Like the full moon was like where like it's kind of like the culmination point where like it's like the energy is full. Like we've experienced everything we have to experience in the cycle, and then the new moon is like a new cycle of energy appearing. So so it's a good time to just like kind of set your attentions for like kind of like who you are, like maybe a new identity that you're choosing to have, or this I amness that you are. But moving from the moon to Pluto. So yeah, last week we talked about Mars, how Mars has water on it, and this week they found NASA has reported that. So NASA just released a picture of Pluto, and it's like really pretty. It's basically like it just looks like this. Have you ever seen like the Lord of the Rings ring with like this glow around it? This has like, but it like kind of looks like that, except it's like a blue. It's this beautiful blue ring. And so basically, what NASA said, is that Pluto has blue skies, that like ours, and that like all the blue. Basically, there's also like tons of ice on it, and the color of the planet. Yeah, so they say like they have like there's ice. I think we already knew that there's ice on Pluto, but they have blue skies, which is very interesting. So it's very similar to Earth in that manner. But they didn't know that before, apparently. So it's kind of cool. But
Cool.
So that was my space news since we were there.
For sure. Well, I feel like we got a pretty deep conversation today.
That was good.
So
that was good.
the time just kind of flew by.
It really did. That was awesome.
All right, man. Well, nice talking to you. I'll see ya.
Sounds good, man.
Have
Peace.
a good rest of your night.
I will. So long.